Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We are here going live, going interactive today. I was hoping it was a good day for you guys. Today is Sunday, and it's about 10:22 a.m. Central Time. I'm not sure what time it is, but I just wanted to do a quick live stream. We have never done this before here on the channel, but I wanted to make myself available for more interactive YouTube sessions here. So I just wanted to kind of throw it out there. I don't really have anything scheduled, and I didn't really sort of announce this to the channel. So I'm not quite sure if you guys can hear me. Big Daddy is here. Awesome. Welcome, Big Daddy, to the live stream. I wanted to go and do a live stream. Hey, Dwayne Outdoors is here. Hey, Dwayne, can you guys see me? Cool. Awesome, guys. I'm just putting it out there. Marcia, Noreen, good morning. So cool to have you guys here. I don't know if it's like a glare through my glasses or anything, but I just want to sort of host a session and sort of get into some meat of topics and just sort of help people get a new mindset. That's really sort of what it is, and sort of work on those stubborn spots. So some people have been with us here on the channel for a long period of time. Sunny Days says hi. Hey, Sunny Days. I'm going to try to monitor the chat, but I really want to zoom in and focus in really, I would say, on stubborn spots for people. When I talk about healing through narcissistic abuse, psychopathic abuse, really there is a betrayal of inner trust, really at the core of your I am. So we're talking about a real fundamental existential right to life that you are sort of deprived of, or deprived of the energy of. So, and not to sort of vacillate, but we're really talking about when you feel that you're hitting on all cylinders, that you are okay, that you're in, your mind is right. You don't have to second guess or doubt yourself. So that core state where really there are a lot of stubborn spots is really what I want to address here on the live stream, because some people have sort of just discovered that they've had an anger issue, or a self-trust issue, or a relationship issue. And when we talk about, narcissistic abuse, we're talking about violation of your boundaries. So the boundaries which are defining yourself, and then your outlook. Like we always talk about here on the channel, where is your chair at the football game? Are you in the bleachers? Are you in the nosebleeds? Are you in the orchestra pit? I mean, is it, how does it feel? How does it sound like? What does it look like? And oftentimes people have a lot of hurt where, they're so weighed down that they can't even get perspective, where they even have sort of a glimmer of strength that isn't sort of overly saturated in pain after this sort of abuse. So we're talking about emotional pain. We're talking really about a couple subsets of hurt, which can manifest in anxiety. I feel anxious. Oh my God, I'm insecure. What's wrong with me? I'm hot under the collar. I'm fearful. Addie's mom, hey, cool, good to see you here. I'm so glad you guys got the notification. I'm trying to do a live stream. Yeah, the hardest thing is when children are getting hurt. Yeah, that is so true, because you're talking about young, impressionable lives, that are dough, and putty in your hands, and maybe you have been there, or maybe you even feel there with them. You feel the that intensity of that newborn life, that you don't want to get ruined, So, and when those innocent lives, they're to be set up for success. And oftentimes narcissists will have jealousy of children. They won't feel that they're getting enough attention. And it's look, you're supposed to be the dad here. You're supposed to be sort of the provider, or the one who is guiding and giving example and trust, and, isn't sort of creating a toxic connection there because of some sort of need to feel better than, or they're jealous of their children. So the children are definitely really a core stubborn part. I mean, and it's so hurtful, and a lot of it is so hurtful. It's hard to get a good mindset. It's so difficult to sort of put, your emotions are sort of your energy in motion, and like, how do you shape them so it feels good? Because usually, in a narcissist, you're always sort of struggling to show them, that they are, lovable enough, and that they should include you. So there becomes sort of a trauma bond with, being in love with people who are over you, and then who have violated you at the same time. So you develop this trauma bond and a real legacy, really of a betrayal bond as well, where only you're so used to being betrayed and distrust that the opposite or the antithesis of that doesn't feel strong or realistic for you, or practical, or how can I get there? These are like your stubborn spots, just because it presents a conflict with what you've had hammered into you for so long. So it begins difficult to regain your reality and your sense of I am at 100% capacity when you're moving through that journey. So yeah, and so great to see you guys. Inverted Introvert Soul is here. Beautiful name. Marsha, Noreen, thank you so much for always diving deeply in the kinds of violations. Yeah, because we talk about really boundaries and sort of where is that, how do you get at that stubborn space? So for a lot of people, either it's anger and hurt or feeling of unjust, and then or anger, and then it becomes like impulsive, or it feels difficult to sort of get up and regain certain mindset states for yourself. Especially if you're we have a lot of people who have, viewers who are like in the midst of relationships, and they're trying to claw their way out or know if it's the right decision, and a lot of it is difficult. It's very difficult. And then to re-ascertain your priorities, that like health is number one, and that my I am is number one. And that's usually the main thing that is sacrificed in these abusive relationships. It's like you become nothing more than what everybody, we're going to use some like lingos here, just because MML is here. Good morning. So like some lingo, people talk about like supply, and so you have to really like supplies. I'm going to go to the store and get some supplies, like Elmer's glue. I'm going to get camping supplies. Like, what type of supplies are we, house cleaning supplies? So people don't understand like that these people take people on as if they are to help them, and basically become used or as an objectified, like a stepping stone, just to get them to what they want, and what they want without sort of seeing what your feelings and your experiences. So we talk about the narcissist who kind of only sees what they desire. They don't oftentimes see the truth. They don't have empathy. They have an empathy deficit. So then you have a deficit of being acknowledged. You have a deficit of being validated. You have a deficit of being heard. And then children also, so someone had put that in there as well. Children often, they're the ones who need attention. They're not too needy. Those are children. I mean, they cry, they need attention. And then all up, from there. I mean, so, if you're with parents who are narcissistic, oftentimes they, will be very dismissive or minimizing, and sort of, make them feel as if they're too needy or, undeserving, and that, everything should sort of be looped back to whatever is good or convenient or sort of validating for them and how they appear. It's usually a very superficial thing. And so kids can be very, very emotionally distraught too, so that that kind of those stubborn spots are really about that deficit, where if you've been around a lot of people who are narcissistic or psychopathic, and who have, so I talk about those two categories here because I feel like a lot of the injury and hurt and confusion that those relationships cause other people are oftentimes kind of together, because it's narcissism is usually never a problem for the person who is selfish. So it's, and then being, psychopathic, it's never really a problem for them. In fact, they usually perceive it as like an advantage, that they have a leg up on everything, that they're not held back by what would anybody else think? Why would I even think that? What do you mean you guys are afraid to go in here and do that? What do you, look at me. I mean, and their feet just, they have no inner censor, so they have no conscience. So, they have no problem with getting what they want, but they will take supply. They will take, people just to get them as a, as a punching bag or whatever, that betrayal. So they put forth a persona as if, and then meanwhile, you're like, you know what? It's not all adding up to your persona. Like, people then begin to feel that you're being ignored. Or too sensitive, like Addie's mom said. You're actually just calling on something, a very genuine emotion that oftentimes these individuals, they feel insecure by having. Like, oh my God, like we should have a family. Like, I gotta live out my wild dreams, my narcissistic fantasy, and they have all these other, and then you're like trying to rein them in, or like being like, hey, some of this isn't okay. And then you're too needy, or, they, sort of downgrade you, or just make you feel that, there's something wrong with you. And then there we go again, there's something inherently, and then that becomes permanent, a permanent sort of sense of shame. So then people become like, that is sort of a permanent I am, like their I am becomes sort of intertwined with this. And then it's like an anchor, like an emotional anchor, which creates a block, and you can't really sort of move beyond it, especially when it's been reinforced and rememorized by these types of relationship communications. So yeah, like Cheyenne Douglas is saying, like, how do you get your confidence back? So that's really where we want to go to. It's like we're talking really about the stubborn spots and really your I am, where after your I am has been sort of incinerated, made as if it does not exist, violated, that violation energy is what is really, I feel that force, that causes people to be like, not have a boundary, that they're not able to make a statement for themselves. They're not able to have a communication that has follow through with, honesty and presence, and so oftentimes this is a deprived experience and creates a lack of confidence, because that violation doesn't allow you to know where you stand, and it doesn't allow you have a deficit of being heard. So it's kind of like you don't have that positive feedback loop, where you don't have that reward of just being yourself. So that always becomes up for question, doubt, I cannot succeed, or you don't act on, invitations to succeed, either good ideas or positive decisions. And so people then, sabotage themselves. And then you get lack of confidence, because, oh, look, I beat myself up again. I was upset all day, or trying to work things out, trying to make sense of it all. People get sort of lost in the sauce. So different legs of your journey might be there, for a long periods of time. So you want to sort of get through that stretch of the journey where it's like a struggle, and get to the place where, everything is sort of okay, and you've got enough stimulation and not, a deprivation, but there's like more of that balance and confidence, and you're able to follow through and do the things that you want to do. Like, you know what? I'm sick and tired of being stuck, and I'm stuck, but you know what? I can change. If this is the doldrums, then I'm going to put some color on it. If I'm moping around, I'm going to change this. I have no business being this down for this long. So it's like, literally, you have to get that inner spark and that inner, that sort of inner voice that is strong enough, that is not listening to the contrary, oftentimes, which has been set up, through that violation, where, so much of you has been violated that you don't even recognize, what opportunity or strength you have. It's like all shredded up. And get them out of our lives. Okay, right. Okay, and I just want to kind of recap on some things, because I just want to kind of get, as we do a live here, see if we can do some Q&A and stuff like that. Out of our lives, yes. And asking children to meet our expectations, we should look at their emotional needs and how they see things, kind of like looking at things from their emotional needs. Yeah, it's like emotional intelligence. Like, that's really one of the gifts. If you have to really look at the gift of the relationship. And as I talk about, like Dwayne Outdoors just said, we should look at their emotional needs and how they see things, from an emotional intelligent perspective. So that is really one of the gifts of this type of violation relationship, that it can give you a profound sense of emotional intelligence. Meaning you become astutely aware of emotional states and feeling states, and you begin to see things very clearly, and have the bravery and courage to see things as they really are, and stop buying into the lies. So we're talking about some really serious stuff. We're talking about, sustainability. We're talking about confidence. We're talking about happiness. We're talking about children. We're talking about respect. We're talking about, empathy and human being emotions, and how this can either downgrade and, become a really, where you feel that you don't have what it takes. You've sort of been spoon-fed a lot of lies, a lot of harsh criticism, maybe a lot of pathology where someone has betrayed you and violated your trust and cheated behind your back, and they're doing this to other people in your family, and you can't see it anymore, and things need to get changed. Elizabeth Rice is having dinner right now. Hey, and so it's like, that is important to understand the gift and the positivity, and to be willing enough to take the courage and confidence to say, I receive from this. I receive the good from this. So it's like asking some different questions. But people are so afraid to feel good, to feel that they are so okay. Because they have been oftentimes been mirrored back to the opposite, that they don't know, am I really seeing things clearly? Like, as I talk about, they're so used to looking in the funny mirror, at the funny house, or that, hey, Graham Howard, like that mirror that reflects back to you something different other than what you are or what you deserve, namely the absence of fear and the absence of anger. So we talk about like some primary relationships, and then of course, namely the primary relationship with yourself. So it becomes very difficult to understand the gift from the relationship, because we've been, been criticized, or sort of had that defeatist attitude, or even so far as like a victim attitude, that you're not okay just for who you are. We're talking about like a through and through experience. We're talking about your I am. We're talking about your emotional body, your etheric body. So it's that has been violated. So we're talking about something that can be pretty easy to sweep away, as if, it doesn't exist, because you can't say, oh, I've got a bruise right here, and then that destroys confidence. That destroys just sort of your stability, your trust. We're talking about some very, very core, consciousness and being states. So, it's just like, newsflash, you're not just a stepping stone for somebody else. You're not just a widget. You're not just a husband. You're not just a wife. You're not all these different labels. Oftentimes these labels which aren't disempowering to you. So that becomes part of the problem, is that, like, why don't we have why is there a lack of confidence? It's because there is a lack of trust, and that trust within has been violated. Like before, the trust had a chance to really be created as stronger than the distrust. So, or it had been like I talk about a beaker relationship where little bits of trust have been in, or authority, but then a whole lot more was poured in that creates this the pain element, the sort of punishment element, that which the opposite of growth. It becomes disempowering, and it sort of gives a less than full sense of your I am. So you're in sort of what they call like sort of, I call it like you're not on all cylinders, but you're on sort of like what they would call a splintered or fractured sense of strength, which isn't all there. It's not sustainable. And then the strength is then caught up in trying to either please people or become something that this other person needs, even though you're okay and you've validated the truth. Oftentimes that betrayal has, you don't know where your strength is, so you can't really find it, touch it, feel it, know it, live it, breathe it, and so it's not instilled enough. You haven't digested enough of the positive violation. Live, Ellen, yay, hey, hooray for going live. Live, Ellen, yeah. So we're up here, going live because I want to be able to have some interaction, and so and to understand how do you work on those stubborn spots, like to get your confidence back. It's really recovering, really from that that violation energy of saying that there's something inherently wrong about you, which is inferior, according to a judgment rule that they have set up, oftentimes, which is unattainable, which oftentimes is beyond what is good for you, which oftentimes might be, laced with thrill-seeking, sort of high-risk behavior, living too fast, living too hard. When we talk about people who are in relationships with psychopaths, we're talking about people who, you're falling in love with a mask or a persona, and you become to find that you're not an energetic match to that, and that can become very scary. That can become very scary when you haven't had that trust, bond created very strong within, or that has been sort of tampered with, other than what is positive, warm, and the absence of conditional. So in other words, a relationship with a narcissist or a psychopath becomes very conditional based, and based on as if you're, it's the old, oh well, you have to, the narcissist, you have to be sort of on agreement with them. In other words, they're acting out of that empathy deficit. So as long as you can please their needs, you're okay. As long as you're doing for them, but you then can't live your life with your head under the sand and say, wait a second, this isn't the real deal, and this is not where I'm confident, and I'm getting some positive loops met. So and then you begin to live in that confident, that lack of confidence, and then next thing you're having to become like a super sleuth and go, why, what happened here? Why didn't they text me? Why am I not getting the respect? Why am I getting these insults? It's because they essentially want, others to be violated and live. There might be a biblical statement, and don't quote me because I am not a Bible person, but they try to put a lamp on your light, and so all that reflects back to you is this darkness, and it's very scary. You can't live that way. You cannot feel very pleasant. Like your body does not feel very pleasant when it's a state of fear, chronic anxiety, because that exasperates your fight or flight. That is a primitive area of your brain, which a lot of people don't realize. If you look at the Dr. Joe Dispenza, he talks about the three brains. So you're talking about really, living a very stressful, pressurized relationship, which seems rewarding in the love bombing, but it ends up becoming really unsustainable. And then, because the narcissist wants to keep things on a certain excitement level, oftentimes, but they don't have certain experiences on the foundation to create that truth, to validate sort of that stability within you. So it's only expedient for them to then put down others, cause others to sort of wear the lampshade, so to speak, and not be able to be fully empowered or, realize the truth of what they have done. So, these are the people who will, encourage relationships with love tinged with fear or uncertainty, and, as if you don't quite have them yet. And especially when you talk about the psychopath, I mean, it's a very deliberate and calculated misleading of a love interest, just so basically that you can let you know that you've been fooled the whole time and you're nowhere fast. I mean, so they will have that sort of darkness sort of validate within you, and that becomes a whole brainwashing and gaslighting. But we're really getting back to that, that stubborn spot, and that fight or flight, which is when, you're always sort of living in fear or doubt that something is inherently wrong or flawed about you, and you will never meet up to the judgment. So oftentimes that judgment is sourced from someone who has a grandiose or fantasy or sort of, mask. I mean, so it doesn't have the genuineness. There is something then superficial, which then people then take as their I am in its place. So they haven't really had a chance to lean on themselves. And awesome. So Ernesto Busnelli, thank you for coming on today. Yes. So, and there's, I definitely want to get your questions, but I also kind of want to go really broad. Energy, yeah, really, violation energy towards a child. So that's overly sexualized. Yeah, that's no good. I mean, this is very important that you understand the problem with a narcissist is that they create a problem for others, that there's an empathy deficit. So people become, they live in the head, not the heart. Exactly, Lindsay. So it's all it's all sort of a fabrication. And then usually then people who then are trying to, not really call them out, but who are having certain needs or, issues not acknowledged, they then have to sort of sweep over them, or pave over them emotionally and act as if they don't exist, and then, have their life carry on. And they don't get a chance to slow down and go, man, I really need to correct this, or I am strong enough to call this out and acknowledge the red flags, which is that, you can't see the red flags when you're in the denial, when you're in that violated state, because it's too dangerous. You have to be in a camp of it's all about the narcissist and sort of going along with their judgment, their level, their standards, and not having, one's own. And because you don't have, you're going without without a strong identity. We're talking about some very, very, primordial senses. So that fight or flight is then triggered. And then people are then, you don't realize, but when people are constantly criticized, constantly sort of under judgment, they're never good enough. So it becomes a real anxious-ridden state, which is known, becomes really as shame, and then that's really the core of it all. There, you're so ashamed of yourself, but yet you are yourself. I mean, so and that core part of you is what is up for grabs. So that is the part we have to put the polish on. That is where we have to put the shine. We have to get that toxic shame out. Realize though that it sneaks its way in with narcissistic relationships, because narcissists, they will shame you, but you will stay with them. You will stay with them for a certain degree of certainty or trust that you feel that you did not have. So there's usually some, some degree that it balances it out. Red flags, when you become so weird when I'm not with you. Hearing your intuition. Yeah, so how do you get your confidence back? Hear your intuition. Hear your little voice. Hear your little voice that goes, you know what? I am I am, and I am okay, and I am safe. And then so getting into a place sort of feeling where that violation cannot seep into, like emotional microscope, we getting its way through under your skin. So it's because really, people have, allowed these individuals into their heart. These were the people who they fell in love with, who they looked up to, who they had children with, who formed the core of their identity. Maybe this comes back to your elementary or your teenage years or your 20s or 30s or what have you. I mean, maybe this has been all you have known, but this is when, your I am becomes saturated with other than what is okay for you yourself. So you experience that deficit, a deprivation of being sort of listened to, and then that intuition being sort of listened to and then guided and then giving more structure and form to make it more solid. So it becomes too weak. It's like your inner signal of I am is like a radio signal that's just like, it's kind of in, it's kind of going in and out, but your intuition is like you're trying to listen to it, but yet people then are usually clinging on or holding on to somebody who they ultimately think will save them from themselves and that betrayal. In other words, I care about this person so much that I would allow them to betray me and still love them. So in other words, love becomes really mixed up. It becomes, a strong enmeshment, like Cindy C is saying, enmeshment and enablers, and right. So it just keeps the same problem going. So you have to sort of be able to break out on your own, like you are here. And Dwayne, you're right. The shame runs deep. So, I mean, to talk about, confidence, you have to realize that the shame is the toxifier. So, and it becomes a very unhealthy shame. And so whatever it is, you don't have to be ashamed to say whatever it is that you're ashamed about. You have to know what these triggers are. Because if you sweep them under the rug will get a big mountain on it, and you'll trip under your own rug, and it'll look like a walkway, and then you'll find, I've got a trigger. Why am I so freaked out right now? Why can't I, get myself educated? And, why can't I get into a healthy relationship? Why am I staying around this abuser? Why am I my tolerance? So you become more tolerant of them than you become tolerant of yourself. And it's like in the name of love that I think a lot of people make that mistake. And so their I am does not get enough sound waves. It does not get enough sound waves, so to speak. And you don't get that validation. So you have to stand out on your own, especially if there's a lot of other people who are, believe it or not, people, will take supply, as we're saying here earlier in the live cast. Supply is what a narcissist takes. So it's just like supplies for a camping trip or supplies for dinner. It's to get them through. It's what they ingest to get them where they want to go. But oftentimes there is not an acknowledgement of validation of you in the relationship, that this is a give and take. This is a two-way. But then people oftentimes love them so much that they get it out of balance. Oh, yep, we're going to really just, everything is going to be about them. And then it's all about them. And then I can go lower and lower, but eventually I'll spring up. Or there's this sort of, fractured, erroneous thinking that things, it might be reciprocated, right? The good we see in them is really the reflection of what is good in us. And we project that onto them at our expense. Dwayne is exactly right. So you end up just sort of always sort of canceling out your own validation. That's really the core of the betrayal bond, which is like you try to trust, but then something ends up just sort of infecting it. And it becomes an automatic mechanism. You're living in that fight or flight. And when you have been emotionally attacked when you have had harsh judgment or criticism, your body elicits it and reacts and responds. This is not the sign of a weak person, y'all. And I think we had someone who's from Texas who's like, y'all. And yeah, this is, and what was I talking about? But so the I am. So, okay, wait. Okay, I was I just lost my train of thought because I was trying to find the chat here. Right, following our intuition. So realize then the relationship then becomes like out of balance, we're saying. And so we're reflecting back more the good in them because we thought that would be holding the relationship together. And then it causes you from not seeing, being able to see what is really going on, because you can't have closure. You're not on the same page with a narcissist who has a lack of empathy, because they have an empathy deficit. They cannot register that. They cannot tune in. They can't acknowledge and validate. So if you feel that you're not being acknowledged and validated, and there is not that presence there where someone's able to mirror you back and go, hey, you look down today. Are you okay? Hey, what happened? What happened to your shoes? Like, let's tie your shoelaces or whatever. Like someone who, like a narcissist, you usually don't get that sort of in those real moments. The narcissist would classify as the ordinary, the mundane, stupid, boring, not exciting enough. It doesn't cater to my mask or facade. Then, they're not going to give you the time of day. Like we're saying here on the channel, if anything is less than, perfect, or the way that they want it to be reacted, that, they don't want to have anything to do with it. They have an empathy deficit. So they're not able to give life to sort of where your perspective is. And so it's like, hey, you're having dinner. How's your dinner? The narcissist is always just like, oh, my phone. And then, they're all sort of caught up in a loop of themselves. So it becomes very violation. It becomes a real boundary violation. So people then develop a lot of stubborn spots when it comes to confidence, when it comes to anxiety, when it comes to anger, and shame. And so really those are really going to be your big inhibitors to getting into a strong sense of I am, which is not sort of adulterated by that. And so coming back to just a sense which has to be a restoration of safety and cessation of pressure to buy into the lies. So people they're like on a momentum, and they oftentimes, are afraid of disappointing the narcissist or the psychopath. Maybe this person, you're married to this, so it becomes complicated, or they are, your financial support or your business partner. So it becomes a lot more complicated. And, you need to be able to develop a strategy, but hope is not a strategy. You have to be able to say with unequivocally that that sort of lifestyle or that sort of way of having a relationship is not an energetic match for me. It's just not a match. So even though people have stayed with them, they've made a lot of multiple mistakes. And so they don't know their mistakes from their right action, and no closure, right? So you have to sort of let go when your confidence is sort of tied up on making amends with them. You almost feel that they're part of the healing process, when actually, going no contact is very difficult, but it is the healing process. And that to know that but you don't have to be a lot of people aren't able to enter into that, which you can go no contact and still be in contact if you understand what I'm talking about, which is when you're able to reclaim a sense of your own power, which is not a counterforce to the lie, the fantasy, the illusion, the denial, which is all those things that you did not, which is not positive, and then i.e. living a lie. I mean, having people cheat on you, having people violate your business contracts. It is not fair. And then so a lot of people think, well, I should tag along with a narcissist and that is success, or I should tag along with the psychopath and that is success. So maybe they've rememorized this and rehearsed this so many times. And so they don't have confidence when they are not with them. So they have built this up in their mind when you have to come to a cessation of all that pressure. Right, like Ginger says, well said, PNH, you need to put aside the narcissist to work on your big needs. That is correct. And, how do you reframe them, though, so they're in the safe? Oftentimes there is a psychological concept called reframing, where you're able to look at it in a specific light and you put it in a specific place. So rather than, oftentimes giving yourself a real, a lot of, what I call it negative negative validation, where you feel you're defined by who you're not than who you are. You're not wealthy enough, you're not skinny enough, you're not talented enough, whatever, all that. So, that becomes part of what is rememorized and rehearsed. So, and when they violate your rights, that you have to then, usually then there's a lot of pressure, and then that fight or flight, which is just like, circling back to that, the fight or flight is hardwired in all of us. It does not make you weak to be afraid. It does not make you weak to be hurt. It doesn't mean you're overly sensitive or have a bad character. It's a natural reaction, just as, when you would go to the doctor and then they hit your knee and then your knee jumps up. It's an automatic reaction, y'all. I think that's what I was going to say. It's an automatic reaction, y'all. So you are automatically gonna, enter into these states, filled with the hyperarousal or people pleasing, or people pleasing and catering to the narcissist, or violating your own boundaries, your own standards, sort of essentially abandoning yourself to save the narcissist because they represent perhaps something you thought that was consistent and certain and you could trust. And so a lot of people get very, very attached to these relationships, and so it becomes very unhealthy. So you can't kind of see it while it's going. In other words, you don't realize you're getting weak under their pressure. You have to live to your authenticity. So, in the work of Dr. David Hawkins, it talks about power versus force. So realize that your power oftentimes cannot simultaneously exist with the narcissist, because they can't connect with people emotionally on that level. They can't, maybe you have a great sense of humor, you're a great cook, but none of that can be acknowledged, and you can't really live to the fulfillment of your I am with them. So you don't really have an identity of I am strong, or I am strong in relationships, or I can make good decisions. And so people, languish into apathy. And, so it's you have to realize that the confidence is something that you have, the relationship has to give you the gift of that. And I talk about in the book that I'm working on, your lessons learned, and number one, I would say, is that you don't have to live under that much pressure. The pressure, and I would think, encompasses the anxiety, the denial of the red flags, all these different things that you could have caught, but, you just sort of numbed out, or you didn't want to believe, you were entered into disbelief, people bought into the fantasy or the illusion, and then the flying monkeys also, and they don't want to hear about the real, but you want to hear about the real. Life wants to hear about the real and authentic. So you have to sort of open up that limitation when you talk about getting your confidence back. And yes, they are far more dangerous. Yes. Yeah, and so the and like Ginger said, or the little bit of negative, yeah, don't you know it's not healthy to be under that weight of constant criticism. Yes, we are all human beings and we are here to improve. And you know sometimes people who are hurt, they will very much languish in self-improvement, and they really won't live their life. They won't really sort of be where they want to be. There's a big deficit between where they are and where they want to be. Rather than going after it little by little, they, cut themselves down little by little. So, and all those little negatives are just kind of like a weight, like an anchor for keeping you passive and not taking action. And so that is going to be the thief of one's dreams, is realizing that you are in an inhabited space that is strong enough and doesn't have to be in the vibration of their pressure and their lies. So you're real. So something that threads back, something that is really a core part of you, that maybe you want to grow and you have grown beyond. So it's like taking that journey even further. And getting that whole sense of self, meaning what boundaries are and what it is. Your boundaries, realize that oftentimes people who have experienced narcissistic abuse, they feel that their shame, really darkens any glimmer of happiness or hope. So just sort of a chronic happiness state becomes really a chronic fear state. That's that fight or flight, which is really, it is connected back to hundreds and thousands of years ago, when human beings were chased by saber-toothed tigers. I mean, it would give you, a quicker heartbeat, so you could run faster. Your eyes would widen. You'd be running excited. Oh, we made it, and then But that is not a healthy state to live on. So that fight or flight gets switched on when you are criticized, when you are under judgment, and when you are separated from the truth. I feel ultimately your instinct, like someone was saying, your intuition, you've got gut feelings, and oftentimes those are filled with fear, but oftentimes you have to be able to penetrate those in within and soften them up and melt them down, and realize you have to stop gripping, you have to stop armoring, because that will lead to adrenal fatigue, and you won't have confidence, because feel like this is not sustainable. So you have to be able to do some physical exercises that help breathing, and like I studied in college, any light exercise helps to get out, like a walk, a treadmill, riding your bike. It doesn't have to be so you get big muscles, just to kind of clear your head. It doesn't have to be this big sweeping thing, to put you up on par with a narcissist. So it really has to be that cessation of pressure, especially the pressure from outside. Loving your life takes time. Just be yourself, first of all. Awesome. Just because, yes. And make a list of all, Nancy said, make a list of all the awful things they do. When you start to think they were nice, which they can be, look back at the list. Well, yeah, if you have time, if you have a hard time doubting, going back, yes, that's a good question. We can begin to take our confidence and sort of our mindset there. That's that fight or flight again. That's that attack. But then it becomes self-attack, self-sabotage. And it becomes, in other words, you then become internalizing the message of that criticism. So your I am becomes rooted in that negativity, which is not proper. That's erroneous thinking. That's flawed thinking. That's a flawed process within, that the fear, basically packs in, and then repeatedly. So if they have, and it becomes very difficult to be confident and not go back and sort of idealize them. I mean, because of course, maybe they've been a wonderful gift to your life in some ways. The gift of the relationship is, realizing also that you have gratitude for who you are and that it's okay to be different. So the relationship can also give you a lot of gifts for, coming into your own true confidence, which oftentimes you might have been separated from. And it doesn't mean, oh, well, then I'm going to be just jack wild and crazy. I mean, we're talking about, having what I always come back to, boundaries and standards for yourself that are your own. So you can feel, confidence, I really feel is, I own that cessation of pressure. In other words, that lie, that denial, whatever it is that they said that was hurtful, maybe they had, I know a lot of our viewers have had, people who they've violated their trust, they've cheated, they've had double and triple lives, and, they've, bad-mouthed them or ruined, triangulated them, talking bad about you behind your back. I mean, I think that's one of the most hurtful. But people get so used to, like Nancy was saying, right, toxic. But I think it's that people get, they get used to sort of having their own little brand of love, sort of singed with this riskiness. In other words, it becomes a real sort of trauma bond, but more of a violation bond. And what is the other word that I'm looking for? Just sort of a betrayal bond. In other words, you can only sort of love people who sort of have the audacity to betray you. And there's this weird, very unhealthy combination of love and hurt. In other words, support and then cutting down, support and then saying you can't make it on your own, or, just this, I love you, but you're not good, I love you and you're not good enough, but then you become like good enough for now, or all these different things which become solidified in the other, the quote unquote supply that is, it becomes the, and just to boil it down, even, there are the takers and then there are the givers. I would say oftentimes, how do we deal with multiple personalities, right? Awesome, Rosario. Yeah, the gifts that come out, in the healing, exactly. So you have to be okay enough to say, you know what, I'm okay enough to be able to receive the gifts from this relationship. I received a son, I received a daughter, I received a vacation, I received years of living with somebody, I received a lot of outings, I received a lot of joy, I received, a lot of hope, I received, and so, and getting back to the receive, but keeping it at bay, which means having your boundaries, which means, like Nancy was saying, the terrible things that they did, unfortunately, they're really not going to change their stripes or their spots or what have you. And oftentimes it becomes intolerable and unacceptable in a relationship, the kind of behavior that you had experienced. So, it becomes very difficult to then arrive at a spot within yourself which, you can say, I'm no longer attracted to this person in this way. That becomes a very difficult thing to own, because then your identity changes. Perhaps you were so used to that illusion or that lie that saying I'm not attracted, you have to say that's okay, and then that is healthy, and that is actually my strength. But I do have a lot of gratitude for what it has given me and what it has shown me. So really coming into the more positive is very important, but it's also very difficult. It is a big developmental challenge to become feeling warm and fuzzy about being abused. I mean, it's just, or being mistreated, living a lie, or even while it's still going on in front of you. Perhaps you have a family member who's being succumbed to one of these types of people. We have a lot of viewers who have, these types of individuals ravishing their families, trouble with their relationships, their finances, their inheritance, doing all sorts of horrible things, and so the yeah, and so realizing that being just present and not defining anything as good or bad is a great exercise for you to do. And just saying it is just, it's not too cold, it's not too hot, that wasn't so good, that wasn't so bad. So just to stop putting labels on it, because oftentimes those labels are what keep people in the doldrums, especially when they look back and their I am has been affected. Meaning, I was so mistaken, I was used, I'm a victim. And so a lot of people have this going through the threads of their being, and then this creates that anxiety, and then that that feeling that you can't be healthy and strong. So the cessation of that pressure is to say, and look back, I hope I'm not putting too much information. We're going about an hour here. Are we going too long here? Should we wrap it up, or I'm not quite sure, but I mean, I'm not even sure if we can post this to, I don't even think we can post this on YouTube, guys. I mean, I'm just going to keep going. We'll try to go for about an hour here, and I don't know if I can put this on YouTube. I know a lot of viewers have asked me to do this, and I just saw the go live button, so I don't know what I'm doing. This is our first run. We can do more of this if you like. Right, and Dwayne Outdoors, yeah, not looking at things from either good or bad, just allowing it to be. It helps to stop your brain from overly and hyper evaluating things and sort of on that, on that anxiety foundation. And thank you, Marilyn Landis. I'm glad you enjoy the videos. Right, and like Heather says, Heather Yan, I still want the narcissist even though he's not good for me. Exactly. Well, I mean, that's part of the problem is that, when you're in a relationship with them, oftentimes that it's not right or it's not good, but you become really addicted. And addiction is really, people become addicted to that, and then it becomes very much of a pressure and then a compulsion. And it's not something to toy with. I mean, especially if you're young, that gal looks pretty young. Heather Yan, I'm not sure how old you are, but girlfriend, you do not, y'all, I mean, right? You do not want to waste. I don't want to even put the word waste, but put a lot of your time, which is precious, in a relationship where it really won't get you to where you want to go. So if you are okay just sort of being in an addicted state and sort of living that lifestyle, it might be very high risk. It might not be very rewarding. It might be dangerous, awesome, Dwayne. Okay, I'm glad you guys can hear me, because I don't really know what you guys can see, but right, they're slander and they're false accusations. So false accusations, if you're always having to fight, you're always in the fight or fight. I mean, if you want all that, go watch a football game. I mean, but you don't maybe want to live your life every day like a football game. You don't want to have to, shoulder pad up. You don't want to have to put on your mouth guard and your helmet just when you walk out of the bedroom. I mean, you might not like that sort of high adrenaline life. I mean, and if you do, people then get addicted to sort of a sadistic intent from these types of relationships, and so you number one, when it comes to those false accusations, I would, number one, do not launch into defending and justifying yourself. You do not have to defend and justify yourself for being. And realize that oftentimes the reason why they do that is because the narcissist has everything to gain from making you look bad. They have everything to gain from pulling one over on you. They have everything to gain to calling you out because it makes them look good. It's just like as if their job order is get on people. And they become, like we've been talking about here, an emotional bully. And they will oftentimes make big deals where there is no big deal. But then you've got the flying monkeys who are all drinking the emotional Kool-Aid, and they don't want to be on the receiving end of that sort of slander that you've experienced, that sort of scapegoating. They don't want to be on that, on that kiddie train, so they're just gonna, zip their lips. So oftentimes you will find that you might not have a lot of support. So you have to realize that all that creates just a false pressure, which then will try to corrode your I am. Namely, I talk about the core stuff, which is your identity, which is really your vision of yourself moving forward and who you are in the present. So, interest in this too, because if you look at someone, like who is addicted to a narcissist, I know that they're wrong for me. I know that, they're liars. They have, it takes a very strong person to leave a narcissist. It takes an even stronger person to leave a psychopath. People have very, very difficult times leaving a narcissist or a psychopath. It is very, 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 very difficult because their special brand of love is so intoxicating and addicting. Intoxicating and addicting. Nothing could be better and nothing could be worse. Nothing could be more joyous. Nothing could be more fearful. Nothing could be more terrorizing. Nothing could be, closer to heaven, but yet there's something about it that is very dark and unwelcoming and unpleasant. So, you realize that the confidence, where I kind of want to stay on that, once you gain more confidence, you'll stop caring what they think. That's true, Addie's mom, yes. And the confidence loop is within you. So a confidence loop has to be really restored and strengthened within you. And oftentimes it's strengthened by your sensitivity. And especially in the beginning, it might be very difficult to sort of come out of that programming or the conditioning that you have to be a specific way. But it's a beautiful thing to come out of that conditioning. What's the difference between narcissist and psychopath? Why is the psychopath worse? The psychopath is worse because they will deliberately plan and deliberately target people to cause hurt, ruin, psychological breakdowns. They will break people down to the point almost of no return, losing their business, losing their sanity, losing their marriage, losing their children, losing their wealth. Yeah, it can be, it can become, a psychopath has no conscience. They have no sense of right or wrong. And unfortunately, they really don't have any sort of emotional repertoire within. They don't have, they don't have sentiments like love, freedom, exhilaration, nostalgia. So, there's a whole spectrum of emotions that they don't even experience. So a lot of people find these people quite captivating and addicting because, wow, well, this guy is, so arrogant, but he gets away with all this. Or this narcissist is all this in his business and he does it every time. Or this psychopath just lies and does all this and he doesn't even care. And then, look at what they did in the relationships or the business conquests or the property or the cars or whatever it is that they do to other people. You have to realize that they don't have a conscience. So you're putting yourself in proximity to people who has no warm-bloodedness about your existence. We're talking about someone who has ice cold in the veins to the opposite. So and everything is an act. Their expression, the way that they talk, the way that they move, the way that they dress, their whole demeanor will change to be something completely than that which you see or you thought you were in love with or dating. I mean, it's almost like a metamorphosis. It is a strange transformation, which is not comforting. And yes, so there's nothing wrong with you. The thing about narcissist abuse is that people tend to, have to, or oftentimes find themselves in relationships where, Texas Sweet, hey from Texas, hey y'all, glad you've been with us since the beginning. So awesome. Welcome to the live. We're trying to do something like a little bit more interactive. So yeah, like Marilyn says, like a chameleon. Yes, these people are literally, it's in my viewpoint, they have, different tissues or something within the micro expressions that they go through, the tonality of their voice, the way that their eyes look. They're able to be very hypnotic. And I don't say that with any laughing matter, but they're able to become that with which your perfect match would be. So you just lose all, judgment. They are so perfect that you put your guard down and you become sort of anesthetized in a way. And then you become then perceiving in language and meaning in a whole different way that is hyper aroused, which then really throws you off of your organic self, which is, it's not good to be, separated from that. It's very hey from Ireland, awesome, great to have you here from Ireland, welcome. So yeah, that those stubborn spots are very, very important to get your confidence back, and it's nothing wrong with you. Realize that them diminishing your strength or your presence, has everything to do with helping them look good. So yes, it can be very difficult, like we were saying here. Yes, and it's very difficult to leave or be separate or sort of feel that you are standing on your own after this relationship. People have then bought into the lie that they're weak, that they're a nobody, or they're too sensitive, like Addie's mom was saying, and that's your I am, that's your identity. So we're talking about these people have found a way to get in under your skin, into your emotions, and wreak, a dysfunction, oftentimes with then how you live your future and then what you go for in your life. We have a lot of viewers, I'm depressed, I'm apathetic, I'm lazy, I can't find any interest. Well, if your energy, your enthusiasm, your passion, your I am has been sort of darkened with a toxic shame or a judgment or a pressure that has a sort of permanency, and then that fear state arouses, and then that anger, it's very difficult then to identify with yourself and then not have that fight or flight, because if you're in the fight or flight, if you're always trying to defend and protect yourself, you're not looking towards the future. And I hope this isn't too much or too advanced, or the whole problem with this of being sort of made to live small, live meek, live in the shadows of this narcissist or this psychopath, is that you then remain in the fight or flight. And studies and science have shown that it's very difficult while you're in that fight or flight to then utilize your prefrontal cortex. A lot of your activity is stuck in the brainstem and then the midbrain, that emotional brain. So people say, I'm so emotional, I can't get a balance. Well, realize then a lot of your activity is in those sort of real primordial, ancient, very magnificent parts of the human brain. But the problem then is then the prefrontal cortex, which is only evolved in the past 100,000 years, which is your ability to think, learn, discern, plan for the future, make good judgments, that thing is like a flickering old hotel machine or an old hotel sign. What? Future hotel, no vacancy. It might flicker in the wind. It might, one big gust and the sign is totally out. That is really the problem. Then if you're constantly living under that criticism, that inferiority complex, that narcissistic abuse, then you are sort of stuck in the muck, that emotional muck, and you're living really to survive. You are on and that to me is a lot of pressure. You can't open the doors to your life. Your life becomes very small. You're living like, life on a postage stamp rather than a big mural. Where would you rather be? So you have to elicit the free will. You as a human being, and unless you guys have your pets watching, you have free will. So coming back to confidence, free will. Stuart Wilde, I think he was an Englishman, and he talks about, how he was lived this big life in England and all these cars and a fancy apartment and da 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 da. I think he made a lot of money like in his 20s, and he was living this lifestyle. And then one day he just walked away from this magnificent, they call it a flat in England, but and all these cars and all the things. He's like let me just take, I forgot what he took, like maybe some mirrors or something. But he said he was out of that whole cycle. A lot of people call it, the BS. That is oftentimes that sort of that fantasy. And to walk away from it is very difficult. But he tapped into the power, and he talks, he's written some book on miracles, and he's got some YouTube and things like that. But he talks about free will. And part of his recovery, sort of getting out of that lifestyle, was exercising that of free will. And he talks about the discipline that he did. But for example, you have free will. You can get up out of your chair, your couch, wherever you're at, or your car. You can, stand up and walk 12 feet to the north and then 12 feet to the south. I mean, that is your free will. You can initiate that. So that also gives you the seed of change, but oftentimes that prefrontal cortex, that learning, part, like Liv was saying, I had a hard time finding my intuition and acknowledging the red flags. That's because you're shut off from that prefrontal cortex. And I'm not trying to be all clinical here, and I'm certainly not a doctor here to diagnose or treat. What I'm talking about is something hopefully you all can understand experientially, and what I've learned and garnered from my studies, and how that emotional upset creates thought upset, which is your prefrontal cortex making good decisions. That addiction is fused to trauma. So people who have traumatized pasts will be find themselves in very addictive relationships until they say one day, man, you know what? I'm 75 and I'm still waiting, to get married here. I mean, until one finally realizes, wakes up and goes, wait a second, what do I really have, that I've really wanted? And then so you come back to realize, whoa, a lot of those emotions then were too turbulent, too hurt, to get sort of a strong, perspective. And then that I am really has to be in a calm place. If you're always feeling fearful, judged, all of that nature, that sort of manipulation, like we talk about here, the false accusations, the slander, that all those things, they have everything to gain by throwing you under the bus, which is, let them throw you under their bus in their imagination. You're not really under the bus. I mean, look at your feet. Does anybody have a bus on their feet? No. Okay. We don't have a bus under our feet. So that is your truth. This is your truth. You have to understand your truth, and that, and coming from a place of cessation of that fear, anxiety, or anger, and especially that toxic shame. So realizing that if you could put it in a big mud pile or a sand pile, here's all the toxic shame, here's all the anger, here's all the but then here's the good stuff, and you're the good stuff, okay? And your good stuff is you can be safe with that. You don't have to run from that. You don't have to sabotage that. You don't have to become relate to yourself like you related to the narcissist. You don't have to relate to yourself and life and your confidence like you did the psychopath. Please, how do you cope when you have them in you and you can't break free as though you have come back to view earlier? Yeah, that's what we're talking about. So having you hooked in. They have you hooked in. That's what we're talking about. And so when you're hooked on that, you're hooked on sort of a denial and a rejection. You feel that you have been rejected. Feels like abandonment. This is that fight or flight going once again. You've got the saber-toothed tiger all the time. I mean, you've got this, you're on that fight or flight. So you have to bring yourself, number one, to a place of safety, which oftentimes you have not felt or experienced, especially in a relationship. It might have been a false sense of safety or a false sense of security, but it was based on red flags, hyper arousal, your boundary violation. I mean, all the different sort of red flags that were built in. So you have to sort of unpack that and go, wow, okay, I received a lot of good. I gave a lot of good also. So you really have to look at it through a reframing in a lens of nostalgia. Put like a warm lens, on your life rather than a cold lens. Like put, like a burnt umber, maybe a puffy red heart, over specific things where you want healing, and put a little bit of, and this is built on having boundaries and standards, which you must feel right now in the present. So to be able to unplug from that pressure, oftentimes it's very difficult because people feel like, well, who would I be without the pressure? Who would I be without the worry? Who would I be without this? So it's your I am, and your I am really is defined on how you see yourself. So just circling back, it is my viewpoint that like an alcoholic, the reason why, a lot of them have a very difficult time leaving the bottle or just like leaving a narcissist relationship, because I think that in their mind's eye and in their heart, they always see themselves with that substance. And they see themselves with that substance sort of going out of control, or they don't feel that they're enough without that substance. In other words, like, I'm not enough without my phone. I mean, how big is this going to become? I mean, everybody's like, who are you without your phone? Well, it's who are you without the narcissist? Who are you without the vodka? It's kind of like, what's that rocker? Tommy Lee. You remember that guy? What was that? Motley Crue, the drummer, Pamela Lee. So, remember, didn't a lot of people kind of aspire to be like that rugged guy? I mean, drinking 2 bottles of vodka a day. I mean, who followed that path? Hopefully nobody. But do you see how, that lifestyle or that addiction takes that of like an addiction almost to like a rock star? Right. And they are parasitic. Yes. But your life is going somewhere. So contrary to what they are saying. So you have to reframe yourself. And, I would, number one, with the tough spots, looking back with nostalgia, looking back, with the lessons learned, with boundaries and standards now. Boundaries and standards basically meaning like, this is me, and this is what is good and acceptable, and this is what is manageable. And then my standards are like, it has to be here. In other words, if you make fun of me with this, that's not, if you roll your eyes at me, if you go like this and roll your eyes at me at a formal dinner, you've violated my bounty. You've violated my standards. Like, you're below standard, So abuse, to identify abuse, and I talk about a lot of the work, things here. I don't know if you guys journal. I don't know if that part is fun, but the reprogramming. So when you talk about healing and your boundaries and standards, you have to define those. And oftentimes, I hope it helps with a community like this to put this in like our viewers have said, more want more interaction. So why not? We're hanging out on a Sunday. I don't even know if this is on YouTube, guys. Does anybody know? I think this is just live. I'm not sure. Anyway, we're going to keep it going here. I got my mango juice. So we are talking about so that boundaries and standards. Boundaries and standards. What is an example of a boundary and what is an example of a standard? A boundary means I'm not going to go beyond that. When someone tries to say, oh, let's just go to one more bar, let's go to one more dance club, let's eat one more cheesecake, let's just blow off your class, let's just and then people end up sacrificing. So they're going beyond what they are comfortable with. So that is your boundary. So you have to get a sense of boundary, like boundaries with money, boundaries with food, boundaries with drink, boundaries with people, boundary with emotions, and boundary with how people will treat you. So you have violated, you violated my boundary. If someone just shows up to your house, uninvited, 2 a.m, hey, I'm here to party or whatever, have they violated a boundary? Cafe is closed, So, and then, oh, well, yeah, come on in. Why don't I just make you some tea? And, you're violating your boundaries. And then, but then, oh, but maybe they'll love me more. Or so then, a lot of the red flags, maybe this will help solidify our relationship, that I would violate my boundaries. So usually it's done in the name of love is when that is happening, I would say, because they are at such an empathy deficit that they are then on that external locus of control. It's like having a breathing lung. Instead of you're breathing from within, you're just hoping the narcissist keeps breathing. They become more important than you. Just don't drink the Kool-Aid. Exactly. Exactly. You are on YouTube. Okay, cool. Oh, Lauren. Okay, cool. So awesome. Lights on. Okay, cool. So I'm not quite sure how this is, but love equals God. Yes. And then realize that you have to reframe and get some new verbiage for yourself, guys. Love equals God. And, but I don't believe in this. Well, you know what? It's the cessation of evil and the cessation of fear. Anybody want any more evil? Anybody? Okay. Anybody? Cessation. Okay. So we talk about love. Oh, love is just Valentine's Day. Cessation of fear. The fear, I would say, is the main thief of joy that the narcissist sort of indoctrinates or impregnates the relationship with. They sort of imbue it with a fear. You are not good enough. You don't measure up. And, unless you are there to get them to where they want to go for some reason, to feed them, parasitic, yes. They might need someone to scratch their back, make their dinner. All relationships have give and take, but we're talking about an imbalance once again here, guys. We're talking about a problem of imbalance and dysfunctionality in relationship, meaning it is unsustainable. And so then your standards mean, you're married to somebody and then they cheat behind your back. Nope, you've violated my standards. That is your standard. So you have to get familiar with your own boundaries and standards and identify, accept, and enforce. Identify, accept, and enforce. What happens? Oh my God, peace and harmony, here come the butterflies. What happens? I am no good at protecting my boundaries and my standards. This, oh, I thought I was all good, and then the narcissist came around, and I can't believe, oh, I let them in, and then I made dinner, and then next thing you know, we're talking about this, and then next thing you know, they did this, and then next thing you know. Next thing you don't know. Next thing you don't know yourself. Why did I do that? I violated my boundaries and standards. It's better to identify it up front than from behind, but you might have to identify it in the middle. And you have to be able to enforce it with, Australia, super cool. John, peace and harmony, thank you so much for your videos. Okay, cool. Yeah, I do hope to be something different. I am something different. So, hopefully we hit, some healing spots for you guys. I mean, that's the whole goal. That's the whole goal of the channel, is results and change, and not something that you have to show up at a doctor office freaking embarrassed. This just happened. Oh yeah, why don't you just go and, go with your friends and everything will be better, won't it? See you next week. I mean, it's not that easy, guys. So the boundaries and standards are usually what is up for grabs with a narcissist and a psychopath. And then that identity, which is moving forward, you lose an ability to think coherently oftentimes if you're always in fear and anxiety and judgment. How does dismissive, avoidant attachment style play into personalities with strong narcissistic traits? Melissa K., that sounds like perhaps a graduate question, a graduate school. That's awesome. How does dismissive, avoidant attachment style, got it, play into personalities? You've got a lot of emotional intelligence. You're very advanced. Play into personalities with strong narcissistic traits. Well, the dismissive and avoidant, I would say that's more covert. I would really put that at the covert level. And we do talk here about the covert here, Melissa. and that's like a really intelligent question, but I think I know what you're getting at without being too textbooky. So dismissive, avoidant attachment style. So when someone is sort of dismissive and avoidant, so very non-confrontational, and very much lacking empathy. I mean, they just don't sort of, talk about feelings maybe. Oh, I'm, strong and silent type. We don't really talk about that here, or they don't really talk about their feelings. They might be very quiet, type, but, it becomes an attachment problem when there is really a lack of support, a lack of acknowledgement, a lack of validation, especially, I would say, for the degree of space that person takes as authority or presence or importance in their life. So you're, a covert narcissist is oftentimes lacking of, it's not what they give, it's what they don't give. And it's very difficult oftentimes to get what you need from, specific types of experiences that you cannot share, or you cannot talk about, or you cannot, have, so they have an attachment disorder, which means they have a difficult time being in relationships with people. They will sabotage it. They will cheat on people. They will leave when the going gets tough. They will make the going tough, and then they will leave. So they will just, so eventually, I think, they just kind of will make the going so tough and make it so arid that really only someone who really cherishes them would really stay. Who really, maybe idolizes and idealizes, realize that the narcissists love to be idealized. They love to have attention and admiration. There are certain other, personality disorders that need like a lot of admiration, like the histrionics. I mean, you cannot just stop talking about them. I mean, if you could just talk about them for the entire duration of your entire lifelong relationship, well, everything would be hunky-dory. But for a lot of people, they don't feel very engaged, validated, or connected to if they are just they're always about somebody else. Or if someone is not able to have their own bank account, not able to have their own job, not able to have their own set of friends, and they're limiting themselves because of a covert narcissist. The subtle, I would say, ways of hurt is that people end up giving and sacrificing way too much for a relationship with someone who might be avoidant or dismissive, and have that sort of attachment style where it requires really a lot of strength on the other partner's side. So when we talk about a covert narcissist, someone who is very ambitious, driven, making all the decisions, will find themselves, maybe balanced in that, but it's very difficult, I would say, to get your needs met, because you need to relax some time too. You need to receive some time too. You need guidance. You need affection. You need someone to be giving you. And so the whole problem then, excuse me, let me wet the whistle here. The whole problem then becomes people then will experience a profound lack of confidence and a lack of empathy, even to themselves, because they are so deprived of that mechanism. And then they have an inability to sort of be constructive and productive in that moment. So in other words, they might have difficulty with retention, thought disorder. There are too many other states that are survival and instinct that need to be tapped into than just sort of that future, just sort of spot, which is when you need to get out of the fight or flight, you can think more clearly. Think more clearly, and then be able to go on recovery dates and not be anxious. So it's how do you begin to trust, and how do you begin to accept the cessation of fear? How do you begin to accept that cessation of evil? I mean, and it's so interesting here because let's see, how many do we have on? Looks like we might have 79 people on, but my retention is shot, right? So you're so used to sort of being in that fight or flight that you can't sort of come to calm, come to peace, and be supported there and sort of nurture that. So, no matter where you're at on your journey, you have to have gratitude for having landed and seeing now the forest for the trees, and really letting yourself know that you have the free will to make decisions and to change. But oftentimes it becomes very difficult to leave, to go no contact, because of the addiction, because of that sort of because of that bond, because of that betrayal bond, that love has been inextricably interwoven with betrayal. So it becomes a very potent brand of a relationship drink, if you will. If you were at a liquor store and you go, give me a 6-pack of the malignant narcissist with, romance and a, just sort of the bond that is very toxic, is very potent, and that really is one of the betrayal bond, the betrayal. So love becomes inextricably tied with betrayal, and it becomes very potent, like it becomes wild, it becomes passionate, it becomes winning somebody back, it becomes seductive, it becomes like the thrill and the excitement, right? And being betrayed by their lies and slander and projection, so that you have to fight, you then, are then getting riled up. You're then being owned by that anger. You're being owned by, really, you have to say, I am not owned by them, and then the anger or the sadness that they have created, and I know otherwise, and then that's all that matters. So if you have been a victim of that, which I know is a huge issue, and it's very dangerous. And a lot of our viewers do use the word evil, which basically means destructive. We're not trying to be all religious here, but if we can come to a common sense understanding that evil means destructive, against humanity, not not loving, not supportive, not based in truth, but something what people might call more demonic. I mean, dark. There's something very, I would say, characteristic about a betrayal bond, and then being intertwining love and attachment with someone who is betraying you. This is why it's so difficult to leave the abuser. They're so, they're really enmeshed, and their wounds are very much like a key to a door to this narcissist. And oftentimes there's that trauma bond where the supply or the support might have sort of lifted the narcissist out of pain or out of loneliness, or vice versa. So there's this sort of like, I helped you survive trauma bond, that becomes part of the love bombing. And they are beyond evil. I really do think and feel this. I mean, that is, and so if you think and feel this, then you have to know this. You have to identify this to be so. And it is so. And so, but then if you can accept that, but then let them go in love, which means cessation of fear, and light, which means the cessation of darkness. Let them go like a butterfly off into the dark horizon or wherever they're going to go, but let them go. It becomes, that is part of your boundary and standard, which is saying, I'm not going to be owned by that anger anymore. I'm not going to be owned by that sadness anymore. And I'm not going to be owned by that hurt anymore. Instead, I am involved in self-care and positive self-regard, which includes the cessation of fear around self or cessation of evil around self. Cessation of fear and evil around self. I would like to change my username. That's so funny. Okay. As evil, spirit killers. Yes, that is very true. But all of us are here. All of us are breathing. So we are still on the life plane, and we are here by free will right now. We have free will engaging in this conversation. So you are then entering into really that field where you can begin to change. Once you take time to change the way you look at things and understand some of these sort of play of emotions and relationships and your future and your decisions and how you feel, especially your confidence and your mindset, it's very important that you get the depth to how you can let them go and then still engage in that cessation of fear and really unconditional positive self-regard and giving yourself that gift of a presence. And that soul. So if they are a soul killer, so you really, you cannot really, to me, in physics, energy cannot be created or destroyed. Energy, that's a law of physics. I studied one physics class. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. So your soul is energy, and your soul, which I can't even talk to that, but just to that fact that, you are alive, you are vibrant, and it's confidence, I think, is really the important application, that when you can realize that the narcissist and all their uncertainty is in its place, and realizing that you let them go. So I know a lot of people are addicted. I get it. I get it. But then you must then create, in my viewpoint for healing, a sense of nostalgia. I use that word because to me, I love, nostalgia. I think it's, like antiques or family heirlooms, So if you can look at your relationships with a sense of nostalgia, in other words, like that was a chapter. And then, putting a little bit of self-care and a little bit of self-esteem and a little bit of self-compassion, when you kind of think back at those hurt times, give yourself, put sort of a color of sort of pink light. And I don't even want to say like a heart around it, but something like a beautiful frame around it in those moments of your hurt. Put kind of like a pink filter around it, or for men, maybe they love to have, evergreen or, a big mountain or something. And, and maybe you're standing on the mountain, in that hurt, do you see, you can conquer that through the role of metacognition, which is the ability for you to think about what you're thinking about, and then looking at your memory and exercising these. There is something called neuroplasticity, where the brain can change itself. In other words, it can, when we talk about psychology, we talk about, the brain and emotions and human emotions and behaviors. And the neurons that wire and fire together kind of create these neural pathways, kind of like a well-driven, situation. So have you ever been in like a deep snow or deep mud and you're like, I can't get my car out of this, it's stuck in a groove? And then you're like, quick, and then, or we had to shovel, you had to clear a way, you had to clear a pathway, okay? Yes, so, a lot of those old, things are really a rut. They are really your thinking patterns, especially if they are surrounded around lack of confidence or lack of trust. They have been, that road within you has been driven many times, meaning, it's very strong and it's very stubborn and it's resistant to change. So you have to be willing to say, okay, yeah, I am going to change and I want to change and I have the ability and power to change. And so changing how you feel, both looking back and looking forward, getting the motivation to change and to change your feeling state. The fear and the shame and the anger, I think, are some of the most stubborn. So when we're talking really on this mindset today about the stubborn, those are like the anchor. They hold you down, they hold you back, they make you feel weak. You try to go. So if you carry around the shame like a big anchor, if you carry around the anger, if you, have it within you, so that means that's your weightedness. That is emotional blockage. That's when you're not with the flow. You're worried, untrusting. So oftentimes you have to embrace that the neuroplasticity, which is creating a more positive environment within the internal chemistry itself in order to create more positive thoughts. So that internal environment, that internal climate, there was a great speaker and orator named Vincent Genna, and I'm just inspired to bring up his name now, Vincent Genna. But he's got a great thing on YouTube called Stop Stopping Yourself. But I just wanted to put that in there. So he kind of speaks to this as well, if you ever want to check him out. But it's my viewpoint then, and that, kind of that he sort of, I would say, talks about, which he talks about sort of like as a preheated oven, I would think. I've never, I guess this equation would be like having a positive internal climate within your brain, your heart, your senses, your body. So how many people do not have that positive environment? It's damp, it's cold, it's dirty, it's, there's fear, there's hangovers, there's drug addiction, there's financial gambling issues or whatever, so that stuff, do you see that internal climate? So it's very difficult for positive, thoughts and then that new confidence to take place if it's in a negative environment where there's still a lot of fear, a lot of betrayal, a lot of lack of trust, and then things that violate your boundaries and standards. Somebody who yells at you, somebody who criticizes you, who tells you you're unbelievable, you're incredible, people who have heard those statements, means that you are not fit to be believed. If someone tells you you're incredible in a negative way, that means you are not to be believed, So a lot of people do not believe in themselves. So we're talking about the existence and plantation of negative self-limiting beliefs, which will take away from your confidence. If you will then live accordingly to those negative self-limiting beliefs. I will never, I can't, I won't, I don't have, and so you have to realize that then that is oftentimes a lot of the murkiness that you got to get out. You have to be able to use the role of metacognition, the ability to think about what you're thinking about, and sort of infuse your present, understanding, which is the cessation of fear and the cessation of conditional love. So experiencing that for a moment, which is like calming down for a moment. I mean, oftentimes the state of being calm is not a valuable state. Living in a lie is a valuable state, which is a lot of anxiety for a narcissist or a psychopath. So living calm and in the truth is where your power is. And then your healing also is to understand that in that cessation of fear and in that cessation of conditional love, where you're able to experience that. So you have to get some experiential stuff going on. That's why I talk about the kinesthetic. So you have to feel it. You have to feel it. I mean, how many people can, they still hear the yelling. They still feel the slap. They still see, you have to stop. Okay. You have to, stop those ruminating thoughts, because those are owned by the narcissist and the psychopath. They set a lot of this into motion, and sort of that all sort of belongs to them. So why don't we give back what belongs to people, what belongs to them? Let them own that truth, even if you want to save them from their truth. There we go with betrayal bond. How many people want to save the narcissist from their truth and, continue to live that lifestyle anyway, and live that thrilling escapade where you're half in, you're half out, but it's sure a lot of fun. I mean, it's, we don't need to receive them. So if you have received that hurt, that means you have let it, into your I am. You've let it into your emotions, and you've allowed your forward-looking prefrontal cortex to say, that's all I'm going to get, and that's all I'll ever be. You're keeping it as a permanent part of yourself, which is known as, the permanency of toxic shame. So oftentimes it is that shame state, so you have to be able to get your energy out of that. Because that is the weightiness. And then if you can then little by little lighten up, because a lot of people are not comfortable, healing right away. It is a process, but little by little, you can get some distance and look back at the actions in those moments where you were hurt, sort of put in and infuse like a pink light, something that is warm, maybe some, feel warmth in the air, feel warmth in your clothes, feel warmth in what you're hearing, resensitize yourself and even your higher consciousness, which is your role of metacognition, your ability to think about what you think about, and go and then see that and put love and warmth in it, and realize that pain was there for a reason, but that was not yours. It was, meant as an expedient for some reason, which was to help another. So realize in your pain, well, you might have an abuser, you might have helped them. You might have been an enabler, that abuse might have continued. You don't want to perpetuate the abuse, so you're going to say, no, thank you very much. I don't wish to remain in that pained state because that would perpetuate the abuse, and I choose otherwise. And so it is. So it's about then making that choice, and so that, especially so that you don't keep, I would say, sort of looping back. And so oftentimes people, are filling up their I am with, a lot of the hurts of the relationship. But if you can look back and then love yourself, fall in love with yourself in that moment. Oh, but that person's unlovable. Who's telling you that? Obviously from somewhere else. It's not coming from within you. So you have that internal locus of control. It's like an old friend, but some people have never even had that good old friend in themselves. They don't want help, just want to live hurting people. Get off on it. This is true. This is very, very true. And you are right. There is, to the narcissist, there is that sort of, I would say, intention of sadism, which is unfortunate. And you don't want to pacify someone's sadism, their intention towards sadism. In other words, they kind of feel good when other people hurt. I got you, and ooh, you're the bad one. Do you see how they can always up themselves if they can always point the finger at someone else? So, with that, the old statement goes, if someone is pointing their finger, they've got 4 more pointing back. So if someone is trying to, blame should be another one that you keep out of your boundaries and standards. If someone is trying to false accusation and do not defend and justify yourself. That is their lies doing flips in the air like a fish out of water. I mean, they are just trying to restore their sense, and that they are just trying to maintain sort of that sense of superiority over people. And if they can do the inflicting, then they don't have to feel any pain. So they will inflict, and it sure keeps them from feeling any pain. And oftentimes they have no remorse or regret, and they don't feel like they have done anything wrong. So, you have to then get out of the way of that, and just opt out. You have to make a choice. But especially if a lot of your I am has opted into that, then you will need to slowly grow into your strength and your security, which is then protected by the boundaries and standards, which means you understand looking back and you have understanding looking forward, which means you're allowing them to stay in their lane and that you are okay in your lane. I told my ex's third wife, Well, yeah, you might find, they won't stop with the false accusations. Well, no, they won't. So, okay, first of all, so when it comes to addressing that, and we'll try to wrap up in about 7 minutes, if that's cool with everybody. I'm not sure if we put this on, YouTube for future watching. But, with the false accusations, and then sort of that healing spot, you have to know in your heart what is and what is right, especially when you are with people who don't have a moral judgment or who have a moral flaw, who feel, excuses, they didn't know better, all these different things. Especially, if you're talking about a child, children aren't really fully matured. It's very difficult for children. I would say, we do have people who are worried about their children being narcissistic. Children, really aren't really fully matured, even when they aren't even getting close to 21. But anyway, about the adult stuff. So the smear campaign, if your child is, mommy's so mean, we're not talking about a smear campaign from like a child. We're talking about when somebody is talking about you behind your back, trying to get you in trouble at work, trying to get you in trouble in your community, trying to get away with something, which oftentimes feels criminal in nature. You're dealing with someone who is psychopathic, someone who has no remorse, no regret. They don't really have any abstract emotions in their repertoire. They just really have sort of rage and aggression, I would say. It's just sort of and aggression, which is really their desire for power. They have an insatiable need for power and control. So oftentimes you have to be complicit, or you have to go along with that. And then the smear campaign, you have to know that it is to further themselves. They have everything to gain. So what is it that they have to gain by the smear campaign? To them, it elevates how they look. It elevates their standing. They think it gives them authority. And this is all, oftentimes subjective when they talk about the smear campaign, but it's usually to hoist somebody out of something that they want. There's something that they want. And, they're going to want a job. They're going to want a title. They're going to want themselves to look good. So they might be trying to prove themselves in a job, because they want to be the boss, really the bully, the one who's got the hammer, of judgment. They want to be the one who's heard. Everyone else is too loud. You can't talk about anything because you're violating something or another. They will, you can't step one way or another. You're talking too loud. You're talking too soft. You shouldn't talk about that by somebody. How come, why aren't you talking about this? Why are you eating your food this way? Why? Everything and anything. So do you see, it's an exercise of futility to try to fight back with this smear campaign. We could do a whole live on just these topics. This is just, but realize that they have everything to do by putting a lampshade on you and making you look bad. It's an instant presto way for them to look good, and then for them to claim some sort of authority or power. This is textbook. This is, they took your files from the desk. They are talking bad about you behind your back, and then nobody wants to pick up the phone from you. Nobody wants an email or a text. You're all of a sudden, painted out to be a such and such, and then they've got, numbers on their side. This is all predetermined and pre-calculated. And you can't fight clean with those who fight dirty. So you just cannot. So, the smear campaign is going to be a way for them to try to get a leg up, for them to just, really there is that sadistic, intent also, where they harbor these sadistic intentions, where seeing other people in pain, doubt, hurt, are rewarding for them. Being mean, being crude, being the bad guy, being this is rewarding for them. This is where they get their juice. This is what is rewarding. They have an insatiable need for power and control. It is never enough, and it is never fair to the people who are around them. They will not give credit where credit is due. They might give it superficially, gratuitously, but the smear campaign is what is going on when you're talking about the smear campaign. So, it is a cowardly way for them to try to create a perspective which is distracting. So all attention can be on them. It is a way that they, have that insatiable need for admiration and for attention. So if you are okay with that, then you will have to be the antithesis of that, which means you won't be heard, you won't be represented, you won't have credit, you won't be able to redeem yourself. So you have to live redemption and exaltation. You have to know that in your heart. And then that nostalgia, sort of letting them go with that. And then doing, of course, how bad does it get? Have you lost your family? Have you lost your job? Have you lost your community, lost your place? What is up for grabs? I would say oftentimes probably losing custody of children, or, whether they listen to you and the family, of course, is probably a big one. That is what they have to gain. That is, that they can, that's why they can get that sort of, that one track attention. So-and-so's this, I'm that. And then so they can create this polarity. So it just propels them even further. It's just a way for them to get more bang for their emotional buck. So, and now, pop out chat, toggle, timestamp participants. I'm not quite sure what else I can do here on this. I don't want to start clicking things, and I hope that the webcam is okay. And also, give me a thumbs up if you like this sort of live. And I'll just try to wrap it up because I know we're already going on about 2 hours, and I got to get something for my throat here. Let me know if you like the live. And I can see the live chats and things like that. But, definitely know if you like this and when it's convenient. And then if you have some specific topics that you want to cover for more interaction stuff, we can definitely do that. So we're going to wrap it up here. Always more to talk about and more to, look forward to. But, when it comes about the smear campaign, just realize that it's a cowardly attempt. It's cowardly, which means they really don't have the courage to be able to have that emotional intelligence. That they don't have it. They're all built up in their mind. And if they were to test it out, oftentimes, that cerebral relationship just, it's all in their mind. It doesn't oftentimes have to do with objective reality. But what's even worse, I would say, for our viewer who made that comment, is that they make it difficult so you can never sort of outlive that. They try to trap you for good, which is nothing more than flawed thinking. So don't think that they have trapped you for good. They haven't got the best of you. You don't have a bus over your foot. They might have tried that. They might have, and it might make you mad, but get strong. Get self-trust. Get self-empowerment. Just be. And even just being, the cessation of fear, and in needing that sort of pressurized lifestyle that is unsustainable, that is a vote in the right direction. Even if you don't want to hear it, even if you don't want to do it, even if it seems boring, cold, lonely, this will get better. And I talk about resensitizing yourself, doing things that bring you good feelings, feel good vibes. And so if you can, take time and then looking back with those moments, and just looking back in general, I would say not purposely pulling it up, but just having a sense of nostalgia about yourself, your life. You are important. You are right on. You are a living, breathing, feeling gift to the universe. It is time to accept your own strength and your own boundaries and standards, and especially what brings you joy. It is enough. Just because it's, a narcissist wants to live a lie or a certain type of lifestyle doesn't mean you have to mimic that. It's okay for you to think differently. It's okay for you to know the truth. It's okay for you to live in your truth. It's okay for you to be who you are. It's okay for you to be you. You are beautiful and magnificent as you are right at this moment. Despite all that stuff, don't worry about it. They will do what they do. Just consider it sort of child's play. It is sort of a cowardice child's play. And you then on the upside should get into a playful spirit with yourself. Become playful, become happy, become innovative, become creative. Do what you can with what you have and have gratitude for what you have, especially the emotional state of being empowered and embracing, the cessation of evil, the cessation of the demonic, the cessation of the destructive, the cessation of fear and anxiety. That you don't call that forth into your house, your heart, or your mind, or any part of your body, and instead you bring in peace, and instead you bring in warmth, and instead you bring in life, and instead you bring in confidence, and instead you pursue your dreams and you make those decisions and you keep it going, keeping yourself with the positives coming in. And we'll deal with more of those very difficult, places now, but keep your strength. Really protect that. You are worth protecting. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. And don't forget to look ahead. Also, get out your appointment books. Where's your appointment book? I don't know if you guys use notebooks or, schedule in your recovery date. Schedule in your appointments. Begin to develop your interests. What are some ideas? We can go about that more on the channel. Everything from, learning a skill, learning an art form, learning a computer, learning to build, learning to meditate. Yoga, aerobics, all different things that you can do to vitalize yourself is really crucial. And, get your appointment book and make some time for that, even if it's 5 minutes, but do it consistently. Do it consistently. And if you lose energy, say, I believe. I believe in myself. I have got this. I know and I believe in myself and I have got this. I know and I believe in myself and I have got this. And then begin to attract more situations, people, experiences, situations, and events where you are in that vibration, where you are in that secure and safe state, where you've got that positive environment within, where you can then begin to think positively, take constructive action in doing something, reading a book, reading a magazine, listening to a podcast, but even furthermore than that, receiving the good, but then taking action for yourself towards something that you can, you feel better about in your future. So you have that concrete and you're able to see the results of your positive actions as they're reflected in your environment and in your appointment book. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. I hope these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and for goodness sake, please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Peace in, peace out, peace be with you, and have a beautiful day. And we're going to try to wrap this up. I'm not sure if it's going to post, but hope to see you later. Bye. Have a great one. Thanks for tuning in, and I appreciate your viewership, your subscribership, all your great comments, all your great support. Keep it coming and keep on trucking. Have a beautiful day.